Today we're going to build a really cool piece for your fantasy wargame tabletop. This is going to be a desert-themed ruined archway. Thomas has our XPS foam. He's also taken some graph paper, and this is just going to help him to trace out the archways that he wants for this ruined archway. You can see that he's using our steel ruler and just a traditional pencil to help create the shape that he wants, and he's using this graph paper to help him make a stencil. Stencils are a great way to pull off some really cool and really natural, architecturally sound effects using our XPS foam board. Now that the stencil is complete, he's just going to lay this down on top of the XPS foam board, and he's going to trace the outline of it with the graphite pencil. The nice thing about making one stencil is that you can repeat these steps and repeat these edges multiple times so that you have a perfectly symmetrical shape. Very carefully with a steady hand and our hot wire foam cutter, he's going to follow the stencil that he made of the archway, cutting out that negative space very carefully in a nice smooth fashion. This is a ruined piece, so if you do mess up a little bit, don't worry too much because you can always add more ruined detail to it later. Now he's just going to bevel some of the edges here and give it a nice worn and broken appearance. This is a ruined archway after all. To add even more texture to this ruined archway, he's going to take our trusty old brick or old rock or aluminum foil ball that you have at home. Just go ahead and press this into the foam, and this is going to give it a nice realistic textured appearance. Now Thomas is preparing the additional walls here for this ruined archway or ruined column. He's just going to trace with the foam piece that he's previously cut. He's following the same steps using the scenery knife. He's just going to cut out the square lines, and then using the hot wire cutter, he will cut out the relief of the archway. Now's a great time to dry fit the pieces together to make sure everything is matching up before you glue them together. Now that we're happy with how everything's fitting together, we're just going to trace out the footprint of this terrain feature on a piece of XPS foam board. Then in an organic and randomized fashion, we will crop out the footprint for this terrain feature. We'll add further texture to the footprint of this terrain feature using the old brick and our hot wire foam cutter. You can use everyday household items like cocktail sticks to help reinforce your piece of terrain. We're just going to cut them out into small pieces, and we're going to work them into the flat pieces of the archway here. We're going to stick these into each other, of course using our Battlefield's basing glue or XPS foam glue to make a very structurally sound and secure bond. Now we're just going to repeat this step on the bottom of these pillars, these columns. We're going to add the toothpicks, the glue, and then we're just going to secure it safely to the base, making sure that the walls are all properly adhered together before applying the glue to the top. Now we're going to add the top piece of rubble, the second floor, to this archway. Now you're going to want to let this dry and make sure it really seals up and get a nice tight bond on these pieces. You can take your glue, go ahead and apply this around the base. You can use this to help fill some gaps, and you're also going to apply this to add a bit more texture with our scenery sand like so. You can see how Thomas has applied some of the sand into the cracks and creases on the columns just to add some extra texture and visual interest. Now it's time to head to a well-ventilated area, grab your terrain primer, give it a good shake, and begin applying it all over your terrain feature in a smooth, even coat. When you are finished with your primer, go ahead and turn the can upside down. Spray until the colors of the pigment stop emitting from the nozzle. This is a great way to keep the nozzle clean for future use. Now we're going to apply some color to this archway. We have a bit of Monster Brown, and we just thin this down with a little bit of water, and we're going to apply this in a pretty random fashion. You can see Thomas is kind of stippling here. We're not necessarily painting inside the lines, we're adding texture. We're going to be building up layers of color on this terrain feature. You can really have fun when you are painting terrain because you get to get a little bit wild. You get to apply it a little bit more sporadically than you would if you are working with a more finely detailed model. Next, we're going to apply our first highlight, this time using Demonic Yellow from the Army Painter War Paints range. And with this application of this brighter yellow, it's really going to help tie this and the Monster Brown and our Desert Yellow, our Desert and Arid Waste spray primer color together. Skeleton bone is the perfect highlight color for this theme of terrain, for this color of terrain. So we're just going to apply this across the entirety of the terrain feature, just very lightly, but focusing it on the most extreme edges like so. Now we're going to apply a wash, and again we're just building up layers. We're stippling this wash on in random areas to just build up some layers and texture of color. He is using quick shade flesh wash, but you can use any color quick shade that you'd like. Strong tone would also be good here. Then we're moving to the effects paints. We're using dry rust, and we're going to apply this in a very similar fashion, sporadically thinned down across the terrain feature in very randomized areas. You can even use this color to apply streaks, and this adds a nice weathering element to the piece. There you have it. This is all of the color applied to our desert-themed fantasy archway, our ruined archway. To finish off the model, we're going to grab some Battlefield's tufts. Now you can use whichever tufts that you like, but scorched tufts are perfect for this desert-themed piece. Now your piece is basically done, but we're going to take it to another level. This time we're going to go into our Battlefield's basing range, and we're going to grab some Battlefield's rocks. And these are some pre-colored pieces of cork that are cut and rolled to look just like real stone. Now you can paint over these if you like, but just using them right out of the box with a little bit of glue is a very natural appearance. So you don't even need to paint these if you don't want to. Just grab some of your Battlefield's basing glue or your XPS Scenery foam glue and begin adding some of the Battlefield's rocks to random areas on the piece of terrain. Following the steps that we showcased today, you could create other pieces of terrain that fit within your desert theme for your desert-themed gaming table. Whether it's historical gaming, science fiction, or fantasy, GameMaster has something for you. Check it out at thearmypainter.com.